What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking how Manchester City beat Atletico Madrid 1-0 in the Champions League first leg. Now, before we get into the tactics behind the match, check out the OneFootball app. They're sponsoring today's video, and it'd be a huge support if you could check their app out in the description. There's the first link in the description is the OneFootball app. It's the perfect app to stay up to date with your favorite games, favorite teams, favorite leagues, and all the possible transfer news you could think of around all the biggest players. They have the most up-to-date news. It's the app I use to stay up to date on all the biggest games so I can make these videos. So if you could show your support to the channel and check that out, it would be greatly appreciated. And as always, check out both my books. They're online on Amazon. Links to that are in the description, as well as a link to Keyframe, which is how I'm making this video. Now let's get right into the tactics behind the match. So Manchester City built with an asymmetric back four, similar to how they built from the back against Burnley, but Atletico is just a totally different beast than Burnley. So with an asymmetric back four, we have Nathan Ake playing within the team, so he'd be off-centered, focusing in and around the half space with the single pivot of Rodri. Then we'd have a dual width coming on this right-hand side between Cancelo and Mahrez. So with Cancelo in the wide area, this would give Mahrez the freedom to move inward and invert his position into the more advanced area between the lines. And by Mahrez inverting between the lines, we would see him joining and overloading the space between the lines with Manchester City's diamond, with Rodri at the base and three more advanced attacking midfielders with a false nine. Then on the weak side, we'd have our winger. And in this match, especially against Atletico Madrid, how they were able to control the fast transitions of Atletico was with a very condensed offensive structure with very tight connections. So this allowed them to maintain control when Atletico did try and transition out of their 5-4-1. So with high levels of spatial control between the lines, often dropping into the low block, and for the first 20 to 25 minutes, Atletico even dropped into a 5-5 low block shape that made it very hard for Manchester City to create dangerous chances against. So now with Manchester City attacking the low block of Atletico Madrid in their 5-4-1, we see the tendency for Manchester City to use a central defender to drive into midfield or alongside the single pivot of Rodri. So what this would do is give them a makeshift double pivot or two players able to create passing options in and around the central area and the half space. So not only do we have now the central defender jumping using his positioning on the ball to create different passing options, but we also have more support from the holding midfielder and another player we can threaten in advanced areas and create different angles around the ball in the same central corridor. This also gives them depth and allows them to control Atletico Madrid transition with their player deeper in the center back position. So when Atletico would try and break, they'd have a player in positional superiority covering the initial first and second wave of counter-pressing from Manchester City, giving them more support when they did lose the ball. And as we see here from Atletico Madrid, even when players from Manchester City would drop deeper, Manchester City weren't able to draw the Atletico players out any more than their low block. And Atletico Madrid were very disciplined and used their spatial orientation to not be enticed into jumping into dangerous areas that leave them exposed, like central defenders not jumping and following the runs of attacking midfielders if these players were covered by the cover shadow of their midfielders. Now, after some substitutions into the second half, we start to see how the goal came about. So we have now a higher, more central player pinning two central defenders that allowed Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden this space between the lines. So we have the two players involved in the goal here, and we'll outline the 5-4-1 of Atletico Madrid. Now their weak side wingback is just off our screen here, but the positioning of the central striker for Manchester City, just here where the arrow is pointing, is now positioned on the most central defender. This often affects the left center back as well, and forcing him to stay in his position. Then with the ball carrier in the right half space via the central defender of Manchester City, he's progressing the ball, attracting a midfielder of Atletico Madrid. So from here, space is then created between the lines for Kevin De Bruyne and Phil Foden. So with this space, they were able to then maneuver the ball and affect the defense in behind and create the chance to score the goal, which did take a large amount of skill, because even though the central midfielder was drawn to the ball via the progressing central defender, there isn't a lot of space between the line even still to then create this opportunity. So it's a great bit of skill, good positioning around the ball to support the ball, and overload the scenario to then create these passing options, then progress and hurt Atletico Madrid. Now, Atletico Madrid in possession was very straightforward. They typically went with 3 central defenders in possession and 2 holding midfielders to secure up second balls. They played very vertically and didn't circulate possession very much. Man City went with a man-oriented approach to not give them time to then get good service higher up the field to then contest for second balls. But Atletico did play for second balls and look to progress through dangerous and congested areas that they could then transition effectively against and counter-press quickly. And as we see here again, the 3 central defenders all occupying different central corridors, making it very hard for Manchester City to shift and press against, because by the ball changing angles so much, the defense of Manchester City has to shift a long way to go and press. But Manchester City pressed in this situation what looks like an off-center 4-3-3, but it was more of an off-centered 4-4-2. Just with Kevin De Bruyne jumping on as the number 10 to then create numerical equality when they press using man orientation, to then have a higher intensity press to try and win the ball higher up the field against Atletico Madrid's high block when their space is a bit more stretched. But the security from the double pivot often secured the second ball for Atletico or prevented Manchester City from transitioning quickly and attacking forward effectively. And that's where we're going to wrap up the analysis. Let me know in the comments below if you think Manchester City will progress or not, and I'll see you in the next one.